Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second Back to School Public Forum. My name is Jack Debe. I'm the Curriculum Director for the Avon Lake City Schools. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Scott, our superintendent, for some comments, and then I'll go through and explain the format for today's forum. So good morning, Mr. Scott.
Good morning, Jack. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. We've had meetings this week with the teachers, and we had our first parent meeting yesterday morning. And we really want to thank everybody for being part of this and being part of the input to make this plan work. We want to thank you for your patience and also want to thank you for your understanding right from the start. As you know, I mean, this has been a changing situation for the last 6 months. It's going to continue to be a situation that changes day to day, week to week, month to month, really until we get to a point where the virus is under control. Just yesterday, after the parents' meeting that we had at 1 o'clock, at actually the exact same time, the governor was on his meeting saying that there was going to be more guidance for schools tomorrow, Thursday. So Jack and I will be waiting with bated breath to hear more guidance from the state on what's going to happen with schools. And I think athletics is also going to be part of the discussion tomorrow with the governor. But we want to thank everybody for being part of this and know that our ultimate goal is to put together a plan. And it's why we have an in-person plan and an online plan that we can meet needs of kids, meet needs of parents, and keep everybody as safe as possible. We're going to continue working in that vein. We have a good plan right now. There's a lot of details that are going to be coming out in the next week. We're going to use the meetings yesterday and today to put some of those pieces in place and get it out. Again, thank you very much. And with that, Jack, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay. Well, our format this morning, I have a brief PowerPoint to go over that has a lot of information pertaining to questions that have frequently come up from parents as we've been rolling out the process. And then we will have a time for question and answers, and we will stay here and answer all the questions that we get. And so there'll be plenty of opportunity for you. If you see me keep turning my head, I just want to let you know we're also streaming live on YouTube. So I'm monitoring the YouTube feed on one screen and the Zoom on the other to make sure everything is going as it should. So we are going to get started. I'm going to be sharing my screen with you. I would ask if you have questions, if you hang on until the end of the short presentation, and then I'll show you how you are able to ask questions both on YouTube and on Zoom. But I want to go over the information first because some of your questions may be covered in the information that we're sharing. With that, okay. So again, we'll have the update first, and then from there, we will go through and do the Q&As. So I think it goes without saying that this school year is going to be different. No matter what we expect, change is going to be a huge part of it. This is certainly going to be a lot of unexpected things that will occur that we can't really predict the future, but we are making the best decisions we can based on what we know right now, and we'll continue to make adjustments as we receive new information. Right now, the Board of Education approved delaying the start of school till August 31st. That's going to allow us to have some additional time to do some planning and training with our staff and hopefully have a little more guidance from the state. You might notice I put in there as of this time. I think that's also possible to change based on where we're at with the state. We'll be finding out more information hopefully from the governor today. Or I'm sorry, tomorrow, and we'll be using that as we continue to look at our decisions moving forward. Probably the best advice I could give parents is regardless of whether you sign up for the online option or the in-person option, everyone needs to understand that there is reality that we could be going back and forth between online and in person for anyone who selects in person. Even if you select in person, there's a real likelihood that there will be times throughout the year where everyone will be online. So just have your backup plan ready and understand that change is a big part of this. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the remote learning option. That's where I seem to be getting a lot of questions. So we did extend the deadline to August 5th. The remote learning option is 100% if you sign up for that. We will have music remotely, we'll have PE, we'll have art. We're working on all of those types of options. If you sign up for the remote learning option, you can still participate in athletic and extracurricular activities on campus. I know that's a question several people have had, but you are certainly more than welcome to participate in anything that we offer in terms of those activities. I'm happy to announce Dr. Brad Coco is going to be our Director of Online Learning, and he will also be housed at OpenDoor. As many of you are probably aware, we're going to be having a team of about 100 8th graders at OpenDoor, and he will be the administrator at OpenDoor in addition to running the online program. Another question I've received a lot about is related to the curriculum and the pacing for online. So both online and in person will be using the exact same curriculum. The pacing will be the same. Obviously, the activities may be somewhat different, but as far as all of the knowledge and skills and curriculum, it will be the same. We've created some mechanisms that we'll be having the teachers work through to keep the pacing the same as we go through the year. And the other, so at the high school, we may be having a few classes that even if the kids are at school in person, those classes may be offered online to the kids who are in person based on numbers. And we call a lot of those singletons, where we only have a single section of a course. Typically, those are a couple AP classes where if we have 4 or 5 out of the 20 that signed up for remotely, we would probably only offer that remotely, but the kids would still be at school and would still take the class at school. They would just be participating in the online instruction while they're at school. And again, that's just a few classes at the high school would be like that. Our key is we want to be able to offer every course online as much as possible, both online and in person. Okay, I already mentioned the deadline has been extended till next Wednesday. I'm going to talk a little bit about a lot of questions about the commitment period. So Avon Lake, along with every other district that I've seen in our area, has asked for commitments to be for the entire first semester through January. The reasons are, number one, we have to make staffing decisions based on enrollment for online and enrollment for in-person. So if we have large swings between online and in person, it does not allow us to staff adequately either way. So that's one important part of it. Also at the high school and some of the 8th grade classes at Learwood, they're 4 credit classes, and credit is only awarded on a semester basis. It's not awarded each quarter, it's awarded each semester. And so that would allow the students who participate in that to have their same teacher the entire semester, to have consistency, allows the kids anywhere K-12 time to develop relationships and for the teachers to understand their learning styles, their strengths, the things that they can help them work on. Which is not to say that if there was not an extenuating circumstance, we would just say, no, you can't switch back. We would certainly work with any changes on a case-by-case basis. If there's somebody that comes back to school and says, oh my gosh, you know, I'm not ready for this. This wasn't as overwhelming. I want to be online. We would certainly take a look at that, and vice versa. If somebody's online and says, you know what, it's just not working, I'm having a hard time with online, we would look at those certainly on an individual basis. But what we're not doing is just opening a free, you know, come back and forth between online and remote as you wish for some of the reasons that we've mentioned.
Yeah, Jack, I think we need to include in there that it's not only creating those relationships, but it's also a matter of, if we were going to change it to 9 weeks, teachers would actually have to start changing over at about the 6 weeks and then doing it again at 15 weeks. And part of this is having a good educational experience for the kids. And we just didn't feel like if we kept asking the teachers to change and change, or potentially change and get ready for it, with all the stuff that we have to do to change our in-person and online piece, we felt like we couldn't have a quality education for anybody. We really felt like the semester solution was the best one. And again, working with those that we know that it won't work one way or another when we need to change, we'll get with the principals and the counselors, and we'll be able to make those changes.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Scott. Another question I've received, and I've actually, I'll go through these. Parents have asked me, what does it look like if a classroom is socially distant? So I have 3 different schools that I had principals send me pictures of. The first one in the top left is Eastview. Then you see the same thing, the next picture at the right. This is an example at Redwood. And then Westview, this is an example of a classroom in a cafeteria. And you can see if you look in the top right of that screen, you'll see there's a TV there. Any of the classrooms that are in non-traditional spaces will still have technology. They'll still have access to the same Wi-Fi, the same systems that we have in traditional classrooms. Some of the classrooms were moved to non-traditional spaces because the way each of the buildings were built in stages, and some of the classrooms are just too small to be usable for our enrollment. This next document I'm going to share with you is now on our school district website, and this is our COVID resource guide. I'm not going to read all 5 pages to you, but I'm going to highlight what's in here so that you can take a look at this on your own time. And then I'm going to cover some of the highlights as we go through this. So obviously the preventive practices are there. And I think a lot of parents at this point in time are familiar with the prevention and the hand washing and the importance of staying home if you're sick. We're asking parents and students to do an at-home assessment, and staff as well, before coming to school each day. We're looking at possibly doing a school component of this that would not involve taking temperatures. We found, based on the research, only 50% of COVID cases have the temperature over 100.3, which is the threshold people use. So there, we are asking that, and we are working on we'll be developing a pledge. We'll be asking parents and families to sign to help us with the self-assessment and some of the other responsibilities related towards kids being in person for, in this pandemic situation.
Hey, Jack, on that one too, I mean, we need to mention at this point, and I know we'll mention it later, that we're working on the attendance piece with everybody. This is always going to be, the term I think they're using now, and we use a lot, is the abundance of caution. Is part of this is kids not coming to school sick. And we know that kids are sick all the time. And we have kids that come to school marginally every day, and teachers that come to school marginally every day. This year, we need them not to come to school and make sure that they're well when they walk into the building. We have lots of people that are giving us stuff where there's check-ins, and we've looked at different formats as far as doing temperature checks and things when kids are school. And in talking with the healthcare professionals, those can make people feel better. But in the end, sometimes that's false hope, because just because you don't have a temperature doesn't mean that you're not sick, especially with COVID-19. The piece with, why don't you take a temperature before anybody walks in the building? Well, we have issues like people will bring up to me, well, parents give their kids Tylenol so their temperature goes down. So that wouldn't change that piece whatsoever. So we need the parents to look at that still. And then in talking with David Covell and other healthcare professionals, if it's hot outside or if it's cold outside, that skin temperature changes, and we can get false readings by taking temperatures outside or even in the building. So, we really feel right now, and again, this could change because everything could change, is we want to put the system in place so that we can have, the parents look at home and be realistic about, should their kids come to school today? We want our teachers to do the same thing. If they're sick, we're putting in place a piece where we can get the subs we need. We don't want them in the building this year. And we'll take care of those enrollment pieces and attendance pieces as we go forward.
Thank you. Then there's been a lot of questions about what happens if a student or staff member is diagnosed. So, and I think the biggest takeaway here is we have procedures from the Lorain County Health Department that we have to follow. And basically what happens, and you can read through this, but we will contact the health department or they will contact us if they know of one before we do. They will then do an assessment in terms of what contacts the student or the staff member had, how close they were, how long. The health department, not us, makes the determination of who is and who is not quarantined. So the a common question I get is if there's one case, does it shut down a building? No, it absolutely does not if there's one positive case. It may not even shut down a classroom. Again, that has a lot to do with who's infected, who their contacts were, and that again is determined by the health department. We will follow the procedures. They have forms and they have notification procedures in terms of who is and who is not notified. But we also have HIPAA laws that we need to follow, and we cannot give out individual information naming the name of a person of who has or has not tested positive. So we will do anything we can to notify parents within our parameters when there are positive cases, whether it's in a classroom, in a building, but we will be following the guidelines from the health department and also the HIPAA laws. And then for busing, so right now busing is looking, there's 1 mile or further from school for pre-K to 8. And drivers will be wearing a face shield. There'll be social distancing on the bus, which means there'll be 1 student per seat unless there's siblings. They will be sitting together. Kids will board the bus, load the bus from the back to the front as they get on. And kids will also have their hand, they'll have disinfectant when they not only get on the bus, but anyone that enters the school building, somebody will be squirting disinfectant in people's hands. So they'll be using disinfectant as they're coming into the building. And then there'll be complete cleaning and disinfecting of the buses between runs.
You know, Jack, on this one, again, we're going to really have to ask for parent help on the transportation piece. You know, obviously with the rules we have on buses, that's going to become limited a little bit. You know, we're in a good place as far as planning goes, and we'll be even better once we have the final numbers for online and in person. But in the end, we're going to need a lot of help by families on getting in and out of buildings. You know, you'll cover some of that stuff later, but I know in somebody's mind, it just went, okay, how are kids going to enter the building? How are we going to social distance? How are they going to be safe? Like you said, there's going to be an adult inside the door. We're going to spray sanitation. We're going to keep kids and have, you know, not only verbal reminders, but also, you know, visual reminders to keep 6 feet and keep distanced. But we're also going to have separate entrances at all the buildings. You know, once we have the numbers and know where the classroom is, you will get maps from your principals that show this is the door that you'll be coming in every day. And that'll be different whether you're a bus rider, whether you're a walker, whether you're a car rider. So there will be specifics coming in the next week or so to your building on how those things happen.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. The cleaning procedures, the classrooms will be cleaned, disinfected daily between morning and afternoon kindergarten and LEAP sessions. And then this is something very interesting, and I think will put a lot of people at ease. We're using electrostatic disinfectant mist in classrooms anytime that there's a switch in the kids or who's in that classroom. So basically, at the high school or at Learwood, if they're switching class, in between the class periods, the teachers will spray that electrostatic mist, and it's basically a disinfectant on contact. It dries to a complete touch within 4 minutes. But not only will we have those in each classroom, we'll have hand sanitizer in each classroom, bottles, gloves, paper towels. So that is something that, and the restrooms will be cleaned frequently throughout the day as well. And you can see high touch area, the designated entries and exits. We will not be using lockers at the schools, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. We'll be doing, since we're doing a modified block schedule at the high school and most likely at Learwood, they might not need all of their books every day. Well, they won't need all of their books every day, so that will limit what they have to bring to school each day. And then on the lunches, we have procedures in place for sanitizing and cleaning before and after lunch, and kids washing hands. At the K-6 level, the lunches will be brought to the classrooms, and then they're working on the procedures for how the kids will get their lunches at Learwood in the high school. But part of it will be, we're looking at doing a pre-ordering system. And then if you are doing online, you still have access to school lunches through the federal lunch program, and those will all be available at the high school. And you'll receive more information on that piece.
You know, Jack, on that piece that we've had a number of parents ask about, kids with allergies, food allergies, you know, and I know Becky is probably on this call somewhere, Becky Bush. You know, she does a great job in working with the teachers to identifying those kids and making sure that we watch very closely. So that will be part of our system as we bring lunches and look at all of our kids across the board.
Actually, Becky's at a training right now. Otherwise, she would be in here. So I wanted to make sure I hit Becky's notes right now. But we have hired additional nurses for the school year. So right now, there used to be one nurse that shared 2 buildings. We now have 2 nurses on each team, and each team is covering 2 buildings. So there's always a backup for each of the schools, and there will be nurse coverage basically at each building available from bell to bell. So we basically added, I think the number was 72 additional nursing hours per week by adding additional staff. As I mentioned before, daily health checks are being considered. We're working on additional information for that. And then visitors, any visitors that come into the building will have their temperatures checked before they can enter any main part of the building. And again, I did talk about cleaning and sanitizing. I just wanted to make sure those stood out in the PowerPoint because I know there were a lot of questions on that. And then want to jump to masks now. So we're trying to make sure everyone understands that masks will be age level and developmentally appropriate. Kids will have opportunities throughout the day to take masks off, especially the younger kids. Anytime we're doing any language development in terms of phonics, reading, a foreign language, those are times where kids need to be able to take their masks off. The teachers will be able to take the masks off and use their visors so kids can see lips moving, teachers can see lips moving. We'll also have opportunities where kids are going outside and social distancing, whether it's for a class lesson or if it's for recess at the elementary, where they'll be able to take their masks off. We're going to work with kids, and our staff will also be working with them on the correct way to wear masks, when it's okay to have them on, have them off. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to be the mask police. We want to help remind kids how to wear masks safely, why they're required to wear the masks. And we hope that we can count on support from parents to help work with your kids at home to practice wearing the mask before they come to school. We have some videos that will be coming out as we get closer to the school year that will be available to parents. And really, we're just going to make sure it's appropriate for the kids at their level. Anything, Mr. Scott, you want to add on that? Or,
Jack, I think, this has been a tough one from the beginning. And when we started this, we had highly recommended to wear masks in, and then like everything else, we got more information and in really looking at what we need to do to make sure we can keep the in-person school going, making masks mandatory. And of course, just like you said, making it age appropriate. We need to put every barrier we can in place, because we know that the one thing that we do not want to happen, unless it just has to happen, is everybody going online for a long period of time. And I know there's still a lot of controversy about masks, but this is something we need to do to keep our schools open. And we will work with the social emotional piece. We're doing training with the teachers. We want to do training with the kids and make it a positive thing for us, because the alternative is just not good. We need to have kids in school. We know that after the spring, and the kids are aware of that. I talk to the high school kids and middle school kids. I see them all over town, or, we're doing so many activities up here at the school right now. They know that whether they're an athlete or whether they're in band or just want to come to school to see their friends and be with their teachers and have academics in a classroom with people, they know that this is vital. And we've got to have them on board for it to work. We've got to have the parents on board for it to work. It is a vital piece of what we need to do in order to keep in-person school going until the crisis is over. So we really appreciate it, and we know how hard it is, but we also know we can do it. This is Avon Lake. We know we can do this, and we know we can stay in school.
The next piece I want to share, I just wanted to share a little bit about, when we went to remote learning last time, we went under very short notice and we were putting things together. We are actually doing a lot now to provide a lot of training for our staff. If you look through, the main point is we have 23 different sessions that our staff will be participating in starting next week. They won't attend all of them. They'll be attending at least 3 or as many as they want to attend. But we've put social emotional things in there, a lot of things on using technology in school, how to do blended classes, how to use anything that they have requested, or anything that we thought would make help them do their job better for any period that we're remote. That's one of the things that we are spending a lot of time during August doing. And that week before school starts, there's a lot of time for staff to have training and collaboration and planning, because we want to get the school year off to the best start we can, and also be prepared for any changes that are likely to occur throughout the year. And then I also wanted to mention that we have the opportunity for anyone K-12 to sign out a Chromebook for the year. And this is if you're signing one out to take home. At K-8, we'll be assigning each student a Chromebook. If the parent doesn't sign for them to take it home, they'll just leave it at school. We'll also have these available for kids at the high school that would like to sign them out as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. And there are 2 ways that you can ask questions. If you are any of the 20 people watching me on YouTube right now, you can write a comment in the comment box, or and I'll see your questions there. And if you are watching on Zoom, you can chat me a question at the chat button, and we'll go through all the questions there. And I'm also going to pull up and see if I had a few people that have emailed me questions ahead of time, and I'll be going through some of those as well. Okay, first question. I've heard about several teachers and nurses being added. How can the district afford to hire all of these? Mr. Scott, I'll let you take that one.
And the cost, of course, we're hoping, because we hear we're going to get some assistance from the state, from care funding and those kinds of things. But, in the past, we've always been very, very cautious with our finances. So we do have dollars. It could affect us down the road in a year or 2 or 3 years. But in the end, that cost, because we need to be in school, and whether it's online or whether it's in person, we need to have kids in school right now. And the cost of that in the future would be much, much more. So we feel like having to add a teacher, having to add a nurse, having to have resources, having to have the PPE stuff needed to be in person and have the resources to be online like Chromebooks, that's well worth it at this point, because the cost down the road would be so much more when we have to do tutorials and redo things, and kids being behind, and because that part of our world hasn't changed. Our kids are still looking at graduating when they're 18, whether they're a senior this year or whether they're a first grader. And so that gives us, at that point that they walk out of our doors, we don't expect them to be any different learning wise than they were before all of the COVID stuff started happening in the spring. And that's what we're really shooting for at this time. We know that whenever we get back to normal, whatever that's going to be and when it's ever going to be, we're going to have to fill gaps, but we want as few of gaps as possible. So, the board knows this, and I appreciate it. When I went to them, I said, it's going to cost money for us to do this right. And they looked at me, the 5 of them to a person, and said, Bob, we need to do this right for our kids. We know it's going to cost more. We know we'll have to do some things in the future to cover those costs, but we need to make sure that educationally and social emotionally, our kids are in the best place possible whenever we get back to that normal piece.
Okay, next question. Will the 8th graders at OpenDoor have gym, and will they have offer the same classes? Yes, all of the essentials classes will be held at OpenDoor. When will high school schedules be out? So after August 5th, we will be sitting down and looking at the number of signups that we've had online and how that's going to affect class sections and schedules. So it's probably going to be a couple of weeks till high school schedules will be out. But yes, we will be allowing, some change if there's a need that occurs. This question is asking if a student needs to change a class before school opens. Obviously, we're going to be a little more flexible with that policy this year than we've been in the past because of the situation.
And Jack, as I did yesterday, I'm going to take a lot of responsibility for this because, Mike May and Jack and the high school counselors have already been looking at the schedule and already been looking at how do they get kids in the right place at the right time. And by moving the date for online sign up till next Wednesday, that slowed the process a little bit. But again, having these meetings today and then giving parents the opportunity to ask questions and look at it, I felt like we needed to move that deadline. But please understand that of course, by moving that deadline, we've also pushed back our ability to finish those schedules, especially for the high school kids and for some of the Learwood kids, just because there's so many moving parts on having, course select or course choice for everybody. So Jack, I apologize for that. I know it's
no need to apologize,
but we needed the time for the parents. That was, I think, that was so important. We needed to move that date.
Will we be notified if our child was in a classroom with a person that had COVID? You wouldn't necessarily be notified who that person was, but within the classroom, we believe that the notification would be a general statement. Are the routes for buses based on neighborhood versus school? Each route will be school specific. We did not do the multi-school busing after we looked at it because going from Troy to Learwood with them being at the opposite ends of the town, it really wasn't saving us any time or spaces. Start and end times be changing at any of the buildings. The start and end times that are in the back to school plan that's on our website. I'm actually going to show you how to find it because this came up yesterday. I'm going to share my screen again. This is the Avon Lake webpage. A couple of the things that you're looking for that I saw in some of the questions. The back to school plan is here. And if you follow through, the schedules, the start and end times are on page 27, and they're pretty consistent to what they are now. They're just spaced out a little differently for drop off and dismissal. Oh, go ahead.
And Jack, I think everybody needs to make sure that they really pay attention to what comes out from the principals and the individual buildings as we get closer to school. And then right after school starts, the bus piece is going to stay fairly consistent, but once we put kids into the plan, things could change because our ultimate goal is to be as safe as possible, keep the social distancing. So, the car rider stuff, the parent walk piece, bus stuff is probably going to be fairly consistent, but especially that car rider piece until we know what, what that flow is going to be and look like could change. And that could even be a rolling piece where we ask, parents to come either a little earlier or a little later if they're in a certain situation. So I want to make sure everybody really pays attention once we get closer to school, how exactly that get to school is going to work.
And then several of you have asked where the forms are for the technology or to sign up online. So again, if you're on the home page, if you click back to school information 2021, this is right here is the online learning registration. There's the Chromebook sign out. There's the transportation survey, and there's the back to school form that needs to be updated. And thank you for everyone who's already completed your update on the back to school form. I think we're almost at 80%. Okay, let's go back to the questions. The dwell time for disinfectant, it's supposed to be an immediate effect. It's a 4-minute drying time. I don't know the name of the product. I apologize. Tom Baroni's at a training as well this morning. So T. Smith, I know you asked me that question. If you would email that question to me, I'll forward it to Tom and I'll make sure I get you an answer for that. I apologize for not knowing the name of the product off the top of my head. Sure, procedures for the kids so they're not touching the outside of their masks. So a couple of options. I know a couple PTAs have reached out to me about wanting to buy lanyards for the kids to clip their masks. And if that's the case, I think that's a great idea. So you could put the clips right on the side of the mask, and then they can wear them as a lanyard when they take them off. Or the other option that we'll have is we're going to teach the kids how to take them off and put them inside of a Ziploc bag so that they're not just, laying on something. Will we be offering training for parents? Absolutely. So the week before school starts, and if you go back to the back to school PowerPoint, there's a list of all of the topics in there, but I'm working on setting up a variety of things such as Google Classroom, single sign-on. Actually, I'll show you single sign-on. I did that yesterday, and I had a few emails about that, about how much they like that. Share my screen again. So the kids and parent screen will look totally different. Mine is listed this way, but actually the kids will see just the graphics of the programs that are assigned to their school, and they only ever have to log into them one time. What'll happen is in the future, they'll just sign into their AL account, and they'll see little icons that say Brain Pop if they're using Brain Pop, or there's one for Power School. All of our HMH programs that we use, social studies, Wonders is in here for the elementary reading program. Anything that we use, Ohio's America is a 4th grade program. There's Wonders right there. So they'll see little icons. They'll click on the icon, and instead of seeing all this stuff that I'm seeing, it'll actually take them right into their program. And I'll show parents in a video how to do that as well. Please explain 8th graders at OpenDoor. So in going back to our way to look at how we could open schools safely and be able to meet our goal of getting as many students to school as often as possible, Learwood was clearly an issue when we started looking at the spaces. A lot of their spaces, the classrooms were really small. So I started driving around town and looking to see where there might be some open spaces, because right away the first thing that jumped in my mind was Tops, but I'm like, that's too far from Learwood. And then Mr. Scott and I were talking, and he had mentioned about having been inside OpenDoor before, and with it being right across the street, I thought, wow, I wonder how big those classrooms are. So actually I contacted the campus director. He took me over for a tour, and I was actually blown away with how nice it was. They have some huge double classroom spaces. It's air conditioned. They have restrooms. They have a food service area. They have high-speed internet. And so the more we started looking at it, then Tom Baroni, our business manager, started working with them, and we came up with a way that we felt we could bring a full team over there and still have spaces to do all the instruction. So that's kind of how we did that. And by bringing 110 eighth graders over to OpenDoor, that freed up additional spaces at Learwood that allowed us to be able to bring everybody back each day.
You know, Jack, I think also this is a good point to also say that same process is within the buildings. And part of what we're explaining to parents is, you know, in a normal school year, we'll have eighth graders over here, seventh graders in this hallway. You know, this is where specials will be. This is where electives will be. You know, in the elementary buildings, you know, this is fifth grade classroom. This is third grade classrooms, and they're all sort of bunched together inside the building. That is really not going to be the case this year. You know, the classroom that the teacher is going to be in, and they'll have everything they still need to teach. But if we've got a kindergarten class that has 14 kids in it, and we've got a smaller second grade classroom right now that's supposed to have 18 kids in it, and the kindergarten classroom was bigger, we'll switch those classes to make sure we can social distance correctly. So it's just part of that look of measuring rooms and looking at space and looking what's the safest space for each classroom. So buildings and where kids are and where teachers are teaching are going to be really different than they've been in the past. And it's going to be based on social distancing.
Extra fans in school. So I know the fans has been a controversy because in some of the sectors in Restart Ohio, they're discouraging use of fans, and then in others, they haven't. Mr. Scott's on a weekly call with David Covell, who's the Lorain County Health Director, and actually Mr. Scott's great when I go and ask him a question. If it's something that we're not waiting until Friday to find out, he just texts David and gets the answer for me right away. But he has said so far that we are able to use fans. So, you know, unless we receive something different, we will allow the fans to be used. What determines a heat day? So there's not a set criteria on the heat day because we didn't want to be in a situation where we were only looking at outside temperature. We are also monitoring inside temperature of the classrooms and the learning spaces. So it will actually be a situation where either Mr. Scott or I, or together, we're going to schools and seeing how hot it is, how uncomfortable it is. And by 1 o'clock each day, Mr. Scott's going to make a decision for the next day. And if possible, if it needs to be a group of days, he would certainly do that. But that would be how a heat day would be determined.
You know, Jack, and it's always difficult, you know, and having teachers and students uncomfortable because it's hot in the buildings. You know, that's been an issue in Avon Lake, you know, for the last 60 years because there's been no air conditioning in Learwood and in the elementary buildings. And, you know, it's give and take. You don't know what those days are going to be. We're going to be very, very lenient this year. On a lot of days, we would go ahead and have school in the past because the real hot part doesn't come until the afternoon. And it's those Western classrooms when the sun comes around and it's getting warmer in the afternoon. And those classrooms get way too hot. But for an hour, a lot of times we could take those classes and move them into the media center, move them into the gym, take them outside and be under a tree where there's a breeze for a while. And even though it's uncomfortable, we can still manage that time from 1:30 to 2:30 or 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock when the temperatures really rise when the sun's getting around to that western side. And for those particular classrooms, we don't have that option this year. Just like we talked about moving around, we're going to be using media centers for classrooms in some buildings. In some buildings, we're going to be using gyms. So again, we're going to be much more lenient. The piece is that instead of just going home and having no instruction, that difference, and Jack talked about this before at the very beginning, we're going to have to always be ready to go online, since we really don't know what's going to happen and what's going to go on with the virus. All of our teachers are working now to look at that online piece and be ready to do it. So we'll call it a day early, and I'm going to be very, very lenient on it. That's going to give the teachers the opportunity to get the kids ready for the next day. And then we'll go online for the next day and still have instruction on that day. And whether it's a 1 day or 2 day, again, it's not going to be just a day of lost learning, and we'll watch it very closely.
I'm going to jump to some of the YouTube questions and then I'll jump back to Zoom in a moment. Just to clarify, high school students who use online school can still participate in clubs at school and sports if they happen. Absolutely.
And band.
And
if
band.
they're marching band, they're good to go.
Is it expected for high schoolers to bring their own device? No, they are welcome to. We've just found a lot of high school kids prefer bringing their own devices, but they don't have to. We have them available for them to use as well.
And Jack, that question about the Wi-Fi at the high school, and we've had one about, sometimes it's iffy, especially if kids are on their phones. We're going to look at it again. We actually updated the Wi-Fi summer before last. A lot of the issues come in is because of safety issues. We block kids on going through our servers and using the district Wi-Fi. So a lot of times the kids will say, okay, I can't get on the Wi-Fi when I'm at lunch or when I'm in a study hall, and I have to use my data piece. I've got 2 kids myself. My daughter this month ran our data out, even though we're supposed to be unlimited. We got that nasty text that said, oh, you're going to have to run down at 600 because you've used your data up at this point. We'll look at those pieces, but again, just please know that especially if you've got your own device, we do block things and we do control things because of safety through our servers. If the kids are wanting to go to certain places, if they're at lunch and want to watch a YouTube movie, they're probably not going to be able to get on and watch it through the server because that server's for instruction. So, but we'll look at it. I'm going to have Scott Winch, our tech guy, make sure that we're up and running as fast as we can possibly be.
And we actually had a related question to that, Mr. Scott, about charging stations. And we are going to look at being able to do charging stations in each of the buildings as well, especially at the high school for people who bring their own devices.
Most definitely. I was, before my daughter graduated from Pitt, we were there just a couple months ago. And it seemed like when we walked through the library that about every 10 feet, I tripped over a charging station. So, they're available and we will definitely get them into the building.
The next question, will online high schoolers have access to the morning announcements? They will now. That's a great idea. And I actually just added it to my to-do list. So we'll get that taken care of. Those should be able to be posted online. When can we see a list of high school courses that are not available to take online? We are trying to offer everything online. If for some reason there was something that we couldn't, we would contact the parent and let them know. And if that changes their mind, whether or not they would do online, we would certainly allow that change. But we're trying to offer everything that we can online. Yes, we will have high school elective classes online. And so, for example, labs may be something that are more demonstration oriented, where the teacher is leading it live through Zoom, and then the kids are doing the analysis or the discussion or doing some sort of research based on the findings as they're going through. But we will still have labs online. And then art class, I will say, Yvonne Crago, who's our art teacher, one of our art teachers at the high school, she did a phenomenal job online in the spring. She added me to her Google Classrooms, and I really was only going to look at it for a day because she wanted me to see what they were doing. But I was fascinated watching what the kids were doing in that class throughout the time that we were shut down. So yes, there are ways to do the elective classes online.
And Jack, I want to throw in here too that there are things that we are still looking at that we think will enhance, especially the online stuff, and potentially some high school classes where we might only have 1 or 2 sections and a certified teacher teaching that, and might be difficult. We've also purchased a number of systems which are called Swivel, that actually allows the teacher in the classroom to be seen by kids at home or kids somewhere else in the building as they teach the class. It follows the teacher. There's speakers and microphones, but we're going to have to look at that and put it in certain places and actually try it out before we can say, oh, this is going to be a Swivel class, because there's going to be a learning curve on that and a learning process. but we're going to keep pushing out to make sure that sections are available and we can teach them the best way possible, whether it's in school or at home.
I do actually have an answer now on the disinfectant mist. It is a, if this is correct, it is a PNG emerging viral pathogen and human coronavirus cleaner. And I'm just looking at the SDS. It's made by Mason Chemical Company or Stepan Company, depending on what we're getting. And hopefully that answers that question. Then I also had several questions about some of the classes that have 25 or more students. What would some of those classrooms look like? So one of the things that we did is we actually went to every learning space in the district and measured the square footage and determined what the capacity could be for those schools. So for example, I'm going to see if I can put that up here, but okay, so I'm going to show the high school since the question was about the high school. Let me just share my screen with you. So we actually have, if you see in red, every one of the rooms has a square footage that's used for a classroom. So some classrooms are huge, like that. This one that I'm pointing my mouse over says 1512. So we can take the square footage of usable space, divide it by 36 square feet, and we have capacities for each room. And I actually have that on a spreadsheet for what I was using for each of the rooms in the district that I've shared with the principals, so they have their own building capacities. Did I share that? Were you able to see that?
The classrooms?
Yes. Let me see, let me go back.
Early in the presentation, you showed examples of classrooms.
Sorry about that. I just realized this is what I was referring to. So this is what we have for every building. We have maps, and those numbers in reds are the actual square footage. This is the high school first floor, but we have something similar to that for every building in the district. Okay, how many people have signed up for online in school? As of this moment, we have 302. Are there plans or procedures to increase ventilation throughout the buildings and classrooms? That is, open windows when they can, keep doors open, modifications to ventilation systems. Well, I know they're going through and looking at all of the filters. I actually physically saw one of the custodians at the high school scrubbing filters in the ceiling a couple days ago. And there is nothing that prohibits us from shutting doors or shutting windows. In fact, fresh air is actually very good for this.
Yep, and there's actually a requirement on moving air. If you've ever been in the buildings, you know, people will say, why does it always turn on at this time of day? But we would have requirements of bringing fresh air into the rooms throughout the district. So we are looking at that. We're actually even looking at very, very specialized needs for filters. Jack and I met yesterday with the choral music department. And that's one of the places where we don't have a lot of guidance yet. That's supposed to come out because, you know, it's one of those areas of 100 kids standing there singing at the top of their lungs is an issue. But again, part of that solution will be looking at special filters and moving air in those rooms.
And actually, speaking of chorale, my next question is related to it. It says, my daughter is scheduled for astronomy and chorale. How will those classes look for online learning? So I won't go through every class specifically, but we did actually meet and talk about ways that chorale can still be done online, and we believe that that can still be done online. And then the astronomy question, what we're doing is we're going through astronomy as a class where we have more than one section. So how it looks online may be different than how it looks in the classroom, but the content and the material will be the same. And again, a lot of that will be left up to whoever teaches the online courses. What would the day look like for remote learning? So this is going to be specific by grade level. We're following the national standards for how much live instruction they should get during a day. So for example, a kindergartner might only have an hour to an hour and a half online, whereas an older student may have more scheduled times based on their classes. But we anticipate, for example, at an elementary school, a small instructional period in the morning that's whole class, then maybe a break for kids to either get extra help from their teachers or do a small group activity or something independently, possibly a second whole group activity again in the morning before lunch, and then something at the end of the day. And then throughout the day, they would have opportunities to do either independent work or, again, working with teachers or somebody in a small group. We do have, they will also have each week, they'll have art, music, and PE. We'll have any of the specials. We'll have the guidance counselors. We'll still be doing lessons, class lessons with the online kids. And so it will look different, but it will be very much age appropriate. Can I choose online for one child and in person for the other? Absolutely. Regarding Learwood students taking class at OpenDoor, since the church is open on the weekends, I'm concerned about the exposure on the weekends from those attending church. They have a very good crew that does cleaning, and will also be cleaning and disinfecting. So by the time that church would end on a Sunday morning, and actually we're not even using the worship space as one of the classrooms, so I don't believe that would be a concern, but it's definitely something that we will make sure the same standards for cleaning and sanitizing are occurring at OpenDoor. Next question is about the scheduling at Learwood. Is it block scheduling like the high school? Learwood's still working on their schedule. They have a lot of things that are changing now that we've freed up space for them. So they're looking at all different options. That's really why we don't have a schedule set in stone yet for Learwood. And they're also waiting to see how many do online from Learwood. So whatever their final schedule is still has yet to be determined.
And we really do appreciate everybody's patience on those things. The use of that space, we actually just finalized on Monday, and there's a few details. So like most things, you have to do A before we can do B. We've got A done, now B will happen, and we'll get that to you just as fast as we can.
Jump into a couple emailed questions. I haven't seen supply lists for school. I checked online and it's still last year's. I know several schools have updated it, and if they haven't, they're working on it and will be updated shortly. So the lists really don't change much from year to year. I think you can use some of the basic supplies.
And you really, again, that's another thing that you really need to pay attention to over the next month, because again, stuff is going to change. The teachers will no longer be able to put a glue in the middle of the desk and 4 kids are going to be able to use that Elmer's glue, that white glue. I shouldn't say Elmer's, doing advertisement for a particular glue. But I think that's going to be something that, again, we're going to have to relearn in all the buildings, because the kids really can't share stuff. They can't share pencils. There's going to be instances where we do have to share something like high school science labs, but we're working right now on how do we clean those and how do we make sure we sanitize them before the next group of kids use them. But again, that list of supplies could very well change as the teachers are looking at how the classes are going to be set up, how many kids are in their class. We're still going to do small group, large group, whole class instruction, individual instruction. But of course, because of the safety precautions now, they're all going to look different. And those things will change over time, especially once we get the kids into the rooms. So again, thank you for your patience, but really watch, especially at your building with your teachers, because those supplies could change before school starts.
Another question is about, will the, at the gym, will the bleachers also be sprayed down between periods for study hall? Yes, anything that where kids come in, those also will be cleaned. We'll have multiple monitors in the gym at study hall. So right now we typically have 2 or 3 study hall monitors each period. They'll all still be there for the same number of periods based on the ratio for kids, and they will still make sure that their areas are sanitized between periods. Is there any way you could allow my junior who will have a car at home to go home for lunch? So the only thing that I can say on that is we're looking at, for juniors and seniors who have early release, if we can adjust their schedules, we're going to give them lunch the period before early release so that they can leave even earlier if they'd like and go home, have a late lunch and then go home. That's still in the works. We are not doing an open campus at the high school for everyone for a lot of safety reasons, for for some of the reasons that districts have challenges with open lunches.
Jack, and that's the exact point. Now parents can come up and check their kids out if they want and take them as long as the parents are with them. But we've known for years that open campus, especially at the high school, kids eat, but there are also other things that can go on that aren't healthy for the kids or are good for when they return to school. So it's really not a concept that right now is on the table.
I'm going to jump back to a couple YouTube questions. Are face shields allowed or only masks? Face shields are allowed as a secondary, masks are the primary. Will masks be required at recess, gym, or classes being held outside? No on recess, no on gym, and no on classes being held outside, provided the social distancing is occurring. Where are remote teachers teaching from? They are teaching from school, so they'll have access to all of the school technologies. There may be 1 or 2 due to high-risk situations where they may be from their home, but the majority of them, like I think 24 out of the 25 will be, that I have so far identified, will be teaching at school. Plans for HVAC improvements to manage the temperatures in the schools. Mr. Scott, that sounds like a question for you.
Again, we're going to move air as best we can, but really at the elementary schools in Learwood, we're going to have to fall back. If it looks like it's going to be an excessive heat day, we're going to go to online and not be there on that day. We're going to do everything we can as far as running fans, getting air into the building, but that hot piece is always going to be one that this year we're going to err on the side of lenience. And since we do have the online piece in place, we'll go in that direction.
Great question. Will the students in the classroom be based on bus routes and neighborhood? For example, in our neighborhood, there are at least 15 second graders. Hadn't really thought about that, but I will pass that suggestion along to the elementary principals when I meet with them on Monday. Will in-person learning require students to be in the classroom the entire day? This is saying 5th and 8th grade. 5th grade, for the most part, yes. And doesn't mean staying at their seat all day long, but we have minimized the amount of time kids are switching classes. 8th grade, they may not be in the same room all day, but they may be in the same room for several periods of the day. They'll still go to the separate classrooms for essentials.
And we've had that question too about online kids. Are they going to be expected to be on their computer for 6 or 7 hours a day? And the answer to that is no. It's going to be age appropriate, and you've shown the schedules already. But kids are going to be on, kids are going to be off. And again, as we get into it and learn more about it, those things could change.
Okay, if we signed up for online already, do we need to separately sign up for a Chromebook? If so, where's the sign up located? The sign up is located on the Avon Lake City Schools homepage. And again, if you click that first announcement that has the back to school information, not the one at the top, but the one that has a date next to it, the link to that form is there. But you do need to sign up for it if you want a Chromebook, because some people are doing online, didn't need a Chromebook. They just want to use their own materials. If my child has a cold and say it puts her at home for 3 to 5 days, can she do online learning so she isn't missing that much material? So we're going to be flexible with kids who are either quarantined or out for extended days, that they will have the option to be put into an online class for the period of time they're going to be out. If it's only a day or two, we wouldn't do that. It would just be like any other time a child's out for a couple days, they would just have makeup work. But if they're going to be out either because they're quarantined or they're having surgery and they're not going to be back for a couple weeks or anything that's extended, we would certainly put them in an online class during that period.
And Jack, I think this is a good point to talk about, that if we all go online, the classroom teacher will continue to be the classroom teacher if the whole building or the whole district has to go out and online. That's also the reason why, if it's out for a day, out for 2, out for 3, and we'll work with that, it could be a little bit difficult to shift over to the online teacher, because even, and I guess the good example is if you've got a 9th grade ELA teacher in one room and a 9th grade EL teacher in the room right next to them, the content is the same, the syllabus is the same, the lesson plan may be the same, but just because of teaching, one might be a little ahead of the other depending on what the kids are getting or not getting in the classroom. We're going to work real hard to make sure that the online people are close, but there's going to be the possibility that they're not going to be at the same place at the same time. And that's part of one of the things that we're working with parents, that if somebody is in one situation or the other, and we need to switch them because of anxiety or some of the reasons that we're anticipating that we have to move a student from online to school or school to online, there's going to be a curve in there where we're going to have to make adjustments and get them up to speed. And that could take a couple of days to get there. They're not going to be exact.
And Mr. Scott, you just answered the next question, so I'll move on to the one after that. Can you please speak a little bit about kindergarten this year? If enough students choose online learning, is it possible that space would allow for an all-day kindergarten class at each elementary school for the first semester? Unfortunately, I can tell you the answer is no. In looking at the spaces, the elementary schools have a mix of large and small spaces, and the issue isn't having enough students that sign up online. The issue is having enough spaces to be able to put a full class of, and since we're trying to keep the classes smaller, to be able to do that.
And, Jack, one of those things is, and I had a couple of parents, and I've actually been waiting to answer them, so I'm glad you answered that, and the question came up on this, on would there possibly be, and unfortunately not, like you said, there's just not space. Our objective is to get all the kids in sometime during the day, as many kids as possible, and with full day kindergarten, and the numbers are still high enough that we're not going to be able to adjust and offer any kind of full day. And I want all the parents to know that we apologize for that. I mean, we know it's an inconvenience, but we really balance things out, because those inconvenience pieces, we had to lay them out on a table. If we couldn't social distance, then we would be to an AB 2 day a week, 3 days online kind of situation. And again, of course, that's a huge inconvenience for parents and what's going on at home. So our ability to come to school every day, we felt outweighed that particular piece, but we do apologize for it, because we would love to be able to meet the needs of every parent out there. But I think everybody understands that that's not possible. And we've got a good plan in place, but we do apologize for things like having to go to half day, because that is not what we would want to go to if we didn't have to.
I have several questions I'm going to lump together. So on August 17th, you will receive more information from schools about things like supply drop-offs, what is happening in terms of open house. There'll be some sort of open house that'll be modified. There's still discussion what it would be, also in terms of orientation for freshmen or 5th graders or 7th graders, those type of things. Those pieces are still being worked out. But we are doing, on August 17th, I've asked each of the principals to send out a messenger update to all of the parents with plans for the beginning of the school year. So I will be discussing that with the administrators Monday and Tuesday. We have meetings with them for most of the day, both days. This is a great question, Meredith. We've experienced and have had friends who have not had the same experience of being able to get a COVID test, or because the doctors say that unless they have a preconditioned question. Actually had a couple people email me that after yesterday. Has this been discussed with Lorraine Health, and are there plans for this to change in the near future?
Jack, just so you know, I just received a text back from David Covell from Lorraine County Health. I actually asked him two questions. I asked him one, some of our staff members asked about clothing and what they needed to do in order to sanitize what they were wearing every day. And his response to that was, specific clothing and clothing issues basically had to do with people who were in patient care. He said for school teachers that as long as you're careful and doing what you're supposed to do every day, there's no special sanitizing you need to do when you go home. He goes, our school nurses, of course, need to be a little more careful. And we, of course, are working with our school nurses on appropriate PPE and things they need to stay safe. On the COVID testing piece, his answer was, this is going to be a problem in the fall. He goes, I am working with people on it right now. We're aware of it. He said that, that most likely the Cleveland Clinic and UH are saying what they're saying right now, because their fear is that once a school starts, they'll be inundated with people wanting to come have COVID tests, even though it's just a cold. So I think this is going to be a learning process. He's aware of it. He knows that schools are working on it. Of course, you can go to Rite Aid or CVS and get those. The problem is there's more of a length of time. That particular policy is one we're still working on. And I know this is the case at places like Cleveland Clinic. If you have a pending COVID test out there, you can't go. So that most likely is going to end up being part of our process. We know that kids get sick. We know that kids, when they go home with a fever, what we've asked right now is fever-free, and that's without Tylenol or anything else. They should not come back to school for 48 hours after that. So that's going to give us a certain amount of time. Part of our policy, and this is not in stone yet, but what we're talking about is that if you've got a pending COVID test, you'll need to stay home until after that COVID test comes back, either positive or negative. And then we're going to have to just work on the piece that we know kids are going to get sick. They get sick every year. They get the flu, they get the sniffles, they get a cold. And we're just going to have to work with everybody on that. And again, we need to go back to having the parents, this year we're going to need you to keep your kids home, get through the cold, and then have them come back. There's not a perfect piece to it, but I did want to make you aware that I did talk to David Covell this morning. We texted back and forth. We know that that's going to be an issue, and he is working on it right now, because it's not just an issue for Avon Lake City schools. It is an issue for every school district that's going back, not just in Lorraine County, but in the state.
The next question is about summer reading at the high school. My daughter has already half the book and wants to make sure it counts. So I would, Sharon, I think that's a great question, and I don't have the answer for you right now, but if you want to send me an email, I'll forward it along to the proper person. I'll look up your daughter's schedule and see who the teacher is, and I'll make sure that that's addressed. Do we get to choose AM or PM for kindergarten? Yeah, if you have a preference, that's something that you need, please let your building principal know. We are trying to accommodate parents with what they need. And then had another question about, will kindergarten class sizes be smaller this year because of half day? Yes. So we were having kindergarten, I'm just looking at my thing, the kindergarten classes, most of them were around 22 before, and we had 12 sections of kindergarten. This year we're having 19 sections of kindergarten since we're going to half day. So we actually are using the same number of teachers and increasing the number of sections. And we're capping the half day classes at 16, but right now they're mostly in the 13 to 14 student range. Let's see, who's the online teacher for 6th grade? Still working on that, but it's going to be Troy and Learwood. They'll have more than one teacher if they're online. They'll have one for math, they'll have one for ELA, and then probably the same person for science and social studies. So it won't be 4 teachers, I believe it'll be 3. That's as of right now. Let's see. A lot of these are starting to be repeat questions. All the remote teachers are current and district teachers. They're not ESC teachers. Students will have live Zoom instruction daily, K-12 if they're going online. They may have access to some on-demand videos, but they will be having online. Will St. Joseph still ride the bus with Troy?
And Tom's not here today, but we're working with St. Joe's and with St. Raphael's, which are our 2 biggest non-public school bus riding groups. And they're working with us. So there's not really an answer to that right now. Once again, we know how many kids are online and how many kids are actually coming to school, and we can put numbers to routes, we'll know better. But we're working with both of them. And people ask and say, well, why can we do that? Or why do we have to do that? You know, just know that's a state law. And the second part of it is that both St. Joe's and St. Raphael's are working with Tom to make sure it works out for everybody.
Kindergarten assessments, we're going to be doing assessments in the beginning of the school year. They're going to be spaced out. We're not starting the KRA till September 14th. We're not doing the traditional spring screening. And then we are still doing orientation where you'll come in small groups over the first 2 days. And that information will be coming out.
You know, and Jack sort of winced when he said that because he knew I would jump in at this point. You know, we're working with state legislators, and whether it's the KRA for kindergartners, which probably now just because of the time and when we're going to start and when the legislature can come back, will probably end up happening. But, you know, they're working on a plan to get that done. But that also goes into the rest of the state assessments that we have to give every year. And we're working with the legislature to wipe those out again this year, just like we did in the spring. We really don't feel like it's fair for kids, you know, well, and most of you that know me, I've never thought it was fair for kids. So, you know, that goes into my wheelhouse. But we're working with them to make sure that we don't have to do them because our teachers and our kids have enough on their plate right now. They don't need that added piece that somebody's going to say, hey, you need to take a state assessment in a couple months. You know, just add that to your plate and get stuff done. You know, we want to be able to work on, making sure that our kids get the knowledge and skills to move up. And like I said before, that, you know, we know we're still going to have some gaps, and we want to minimize those gaps so that when we come back to school in a more normal manner, we can move forward quickly.
This is a great question. Are we going to hear from building principals about specific schools before we have to make a decision? So this is kind of like the chicken and the egg. The principals are waiting for me to tell them which teachers I'm taking to do online and how it's going to affect their building. And at the same time, so we can't do that till we have the online enrollment. I would tell you, feel free to reach out to your building principals. They all return on Monday. If you have questions, I know many of them have already been in spending a lot of time this summer. If there's something specific you want to know, but the first mailing that you should probably be getting the big one will be August 17th. We'll be doing a district school messenger for each building that day. If the whole district goes online, the typical online day would be similar to what the online consists of right now. What did we decide about high school choral, chorale, music? So right now there won't be any performances, but there will be practice and rehearsals. We're waiting on final guidance on vocal music. We have some preliminary information that the choral teachers at the high school in Learwood are familiar with, and we talked a little bit about that yesterday. So right now, any performances are on pause right now, music oriented, but we're hoping that maybe things will start up later in the year. But right now, it's simply going to be in class work.
Yeah, you know, and I think, Jack, that's important. They're aware, and whether it's orchestra, band, or choir, there's lots of things they can work on, and they're also working on making it fun, because a lot of times they know that that push to either, have the big fall concert, the Christmas concert, the spring concert, go to the OMEA contests. A lot of those things just aren't going to be able to happen, at least this first semester, and maybe even into the spring, depending on where the crisis goes at that point. But the teachers are aware of that, and they are looking at all kinds of things that they can work with those kids to improve their skills and still make it fun for them to go forward. So, we're confident that we're going to get there. We know chorale is the toughest one. The vocal music piece is the toughest one, because again, it's coming out of their mouth and spittle and those kinds of things that we're having to work with. But we do have things we can do to mitigate the risk, and they're putting those in place now.
Who are the 8th grade online teachers? So I'm just now in the beginning process of offering the online teaching positions to people that have applied for it. They are all district teachers. I've only gotten through some of the elementary and then the K-12 PE teacher. I'm holding off a little bit on Troy Learwood in the high school till I get closer to final numbers to see how this will all balance out. We do have plenty of teachers that have applied to be an online teacher, so I'm not concerned about that. I can tell you who the elementary ones are so far that I have, and there may be additional. Brenda Jones is going to be kindergarten. She's a kindergarten teacher at Erie View. Ada O'Connor will be 1st grade. She's currently in the 1st grade teacher at Erie View. Brooke Springer is doing 2nd grade. She's a 2nd grade teacher at Westview. I actually just offered somebody the 4th grade position this morning. Haven't heard back on that yet, so I'm going to hang on before I announce that. Mr. Hain, who's the PE teacher at Redwood and Westview, will be doing all K-12 PE. And then I have different music. I have somebody for band, orchestra, and music, actually 3 different people that will be doing all of the music pieces, but I'm not ready to go through and announce those. I'm still working on making sure I talk to them individually before I announce it. So we're working on it. We probably won't have all this wrapped up before the deadline, since I'm sure several of you are now typing that question. But a lot of it, again, has to do with the numbers. I don't want to overstaff online. Right now, I'm thinking it's 20 to 25 teachers online, and that's based on what I think the numbers will be. But again, if the numbers come in higher, we're going to need additional online teachers and less in-person teachers. So I'll still be watching that. Love the lanyard idea. Great. Thank you for the lanyards or bag with the masks idea. Will there be recess at Troy? So Kate, there's not going to be daily recess at Troy, but there will be times where teachers will be able to take their kids out for recess, but it's not going to be the whole grade going out at a time like they've done in the past. How safe is the electrostatic mist? It's very safe. It has, we have all the, I forget what they call the data sheets that have that. They're approved for school use, and that's that information that I have. How are we addressing math that didn't get finished for last year? The teachers have gone through, and we've created Google Share Docs that show how far they got in person and what was covered online. So math will be a little more of review in the beginning of the year. Yes, there'll be specials at OpenDoor. I think the cleaning. This one is just asking about, I know each school only has 1 or 2 custodians. Mr. Baroni is working on modifying custodial cleaning schedules to make sure everything is cleaned, and we're not opposed to either providing additional hours or hiring additional people if need be. If Eastview is using the gym as a classroom, does that mean there will not be gym? No, not necessarily. We're having specials in the classrooms. Eastview is right now the only elementary where gym may be used as a classroom, and I'm still not 100% sure on that. That's going to be determined by enrollment, but they would still have gym. Gym is not going to be like it's been in the past. It's not going to be contact gym or those type of things. It'll be more activities that are teacher led that students will participate in. Upon entering the high school in the morning, will students go directly to a homeroom? Yes. We're going to be putting out, it's actually in the guide, we're not going to be able to have kids just showing up for school anywhere an hour before school starts or 45 minutes before school starts, because in all of the buildings, we're using cafeterias, media centers, those types of places for instruction. So there will be a set time that we'll need everyone's cooperation to make sure that kids aren't arriving before the times that we designate. Other districts have canceled music or PE. Okay, we are not canceling. Our goal was not to cancel anything. Is music continuing since singing has been labeled as one of the more dangerous things groups can do? So it is continuing, but it is in a larger area, more spaced out. There's different guidelines and how far, and we were going over that with the music teachers. Elementary music in the normal classroom with singing. So there'll be elementary music in the normal classroom. Obviously, they won't be able to be singing in the classroom because of the distance, but they will still be able to have music and do music activities in a regular classroom. If kids take breaks for their masks that are spreading respiratory droplets, how can you say that if someone gets COVID, that the others in the class weren't exposed in a closed space? So the health department right now is defining someone in close contact as someone who is within 6 feet or less for more than 10 minutes in a row. So we're able to use that guidance to help minimize the amount of exposure. If a heat day was determined, would they get live online instruction for all those subjects? They would get live instruction online. It might not be every subject. It would probably be at the teacher's discretion which ones they would be doing. If we ordered a back to school supply kit, will there be plans to pick them up at the school if we are opting for online? Yes, not only that, but there'll also be a time for you to go to each school to pick up the textbooks, workbooks, things like that, that will be used during the year. Can kids use backpacks to go to school? Yes, they'll keep them with them at their desks. No, none of the online teachers right now, and I'm not planning on using any long-term subs for online. There may be some long-term subs put in the buildings though, as we're adding additional staff. Lots of questions about choir. This great question about WEPs. So we're actually going through the teachers who have online will still be meeting any of the needs that kids have. We're offering IEP services online. We're offering gifted services online. We'll be offering SOAR online, plus classes online.
And Jack, I don't know when we had the Brad Coco up before as the director for online services. We're also going to have a person that's going to work specifically with students with IEPs with our online group. It's going to start off being Jamie Tisher. Later in the year, we're hoping that Doc Murdoch will be able to assist us in that also.
Don't know about Drama Club. 8th grade Spanish will be online.
Yep. I know Patty Franks on the Drama Club at the high school is watching very, very closely. I mean, that's one of those pieces that, you know, nobody knows, you know, but there's a group that's watching it, and you know, just like everything else, as soon as we get solid information, we'll get that out to the parents and the performers.
Can I request for my child to attend OpenDoor? Talk to Dr. Nugget if you have a particular request for that. Do you have pictures of Troy, Learwood, and OpenDoor? I don't, but I can tell you I went in all those spaces and helped them determine what is and is not usable for classrooms. Actually, I do have pictures. Well, I used to have pictures of OpenDoor. I think they were on my phone. Let me see. If actually, I might be able to, if I can somehow do this really quick. I'll go ahead and answer the next question while I'm looking this up. I might have some OpenDoor pictures. Oh, I got a text. Announcements for the high school are located on the main page for the high school. So whoever asked that question, there we go. Can the SDS sheet be made available for review? Sure, email Tom Baroni. He's our business manager, and he can get that information to you. So my building did this and told me that I could fit 29 students in my room, but that it didn't really hold that. It held 15 at 3.5 feet apart. I'm not sure what building you're at, but feel free to email that to me because that's not correct. We wouldn't use we didn't do anything at 3.5 feet apart. We did everything at 36 square feet of usable space. So either your building may have given you incorrect information or may have been talking about a different room. Teachers will be doing online, I've covered. Regarding riding bikes to Learwood, which is encouraged to help with busing, if they don't have lockers, will there be a place for them to store books overnight? And I believe that they would be able to simply leave them in their classroom, not 100% sure, but you could, that would be a great question to email Dr. Nugget.
Jack, I'll put that on my principal's list.
Okay. Are wipes going to be available? We'll have cleaning supplies available in every classroom. And I think I covered that one. I covered that one. Heard school is not starting until September 8th. When will this be confirmed? We have had no discussion about moving the start date.
You know, Jack, and that's a good piece. There's been a lot of discussion, you know, among superintendents about the health department about that start date, and the issue is starting later, except for maybe a potential heat piece at the elementary schools in Learwood. There's really no way of knowing because you don't know when the virus might spike or might not spike. You know, so if you push it out to the 8th or you push it out to the 15th or whatever you push it out to, you're really just sitting and waiting, and it could be one way or the other. So, you know, we felt like the 31st was a good date for us, that we get the teachers ready, get the kids in. And that part of whether we go online or not online is always going to be there depending on what goes on with the virus.
Okay, let's see if you can, it's not going to work. I have pictures of OpenDoor that I had texted out to. If the sanitizer takes 4 minutes for contact, so it doesn't take 4 minutes for contact, it takes 4 minutes to dry completely.
It's immediate.
But we are extending the amount of time for kids to switch classes. If my child is eating in the classroom, who's responsible for cleaning the surfaces after lunch? We have lunch monitors that will be making sure things are cleaned after each lunch period. The teachers will not be doing the lunches. Would a heat day include the air-conditioned schools? No, it would only include the elementaries and Learwood. However, the kids at OpenDoor would still get the heat day, even though OpenDoor is air-conditioned. We're working with the principals on making sure bathrooms and halls are monitored appropriately, especially during bathroom and water breaks. All online live learning will be during normal school hours. Can I post on the website the online teachers? Not right now. Possibly once everyone is done and it's in place, we can put that online, but I'm not going to do it until we have everything in place. Will level 3 put us all online? So that's being discussed. Level 4 would put us all online. Level 3 right now would not necessarily put us all online, but I know the county superintendents are still discussing that as a county. How will we find out if our child is AM or PM kindergarten? I would think later on next week you could email the principal to find out if you again have a need. I think I covered why there's no online, or there's no option to change after 9 weeks instead of the whole semester. Children can't go to CVS for COVID tests, only adults. I think we're still, and then the next comment's about Walgreens doesn't either. we're gonna work with the health department and see how we can get the tests. Yes, if you chose choir for your child and you don't want your child to participate in it, please email your child's guidance counselor. Who should future questions be directed to? If they're building specific, please contact your building principal. If they're general questions, feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact Mr. Scott. If it's a transportation, food service, or cleaning question, please contact Tom Baroni. No students are using lockers at this point. That may change. If a large percentage of elementary and intermediate age students start to have mask anxiety, would you give prearranged break days? I think we would just have to look at that situation if that occurred. I don't want to rush to an answer on that. No, lunch, we will still be offering a full service lunch. There'll be more individually packaged items, but there'll also be hot items as well. You'll also be able to bring your own lunch. Just looking over at YouTube questions.
You know, Jack, as you're looking at that piece that, you know, the social emotional piece, we're going to be working with the staff, the teachers, Kristen Acton, our counselors are going to be doing training with the teachers. And we're going to start out the school year right away, you know, making sure we have pieces in place, to, especially kids that are anxious, that we can work with all of them.
And before I jump, I just want to say thank you to all of the people that are messaging me positive comments about how valuable this is and all the hard work that's gone into it. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And we are certainly open to continuing to answer questions or give you as much honesty. We want you to be able to make the best decision that you can. We know going to school has a higher level of risk, or going out in public period has a higher level of risk than being at home. We're doing what we can to minimize the risks at school while still offering quality education and program. We know that we're not going to please everyone. We know we're not going to make everyone happy, and our intent is to do the best that we can for what we feel is the largest good for the school community. So things will change, things will continue to change, but thank you for parents for everything that you're doing to be a positive part of this as well. High school, are kids in person and online both or neither taking classroom tests? How do we ensure equity for grading practices, expectations, and GPA implications? Well, we are doing both online and in classroom tests for teacher-made tests. I will say, I know at the high school, a lot of the tests that kids take, many of them are online, some of them are paper and pencil, but I've also seen a lot of tests where things are also open resource, open notebook. We'll be working with the high school staff as far as dealing with equity in terms of grading practices and GPA, because we'll still be using a lot of high school staff to help with individual sections of courses online so that the equity piece is there. What will Brad Coco's specific functions be? So Dr. Coco will be working with all of the teachers who are fully online. He'll be working with them in terms of dealing with making sure we are have materials that we need. We have the continuity of instruction where the instruction is aligned to what's going on with those people at school. He'll also be working with any parent or student issues. He'll also be obviously an administrator at OpenDoor for that 8th grade team. So he'll be working in my department. So he and I will be communicating frequently to make sure things are, are as smooth as a flow as possible between the online and remote in-person classes. Where will they keep coats and books if there's no access to lockers? So at the elementary level, they'll be keeping them in their classrooms. And at the secondary level, we'll still have to work on that piece. I thought students will be staying in one class and teachers will be switching classrooms. Yes, they will be staying in one classroom for the most part, at elementary, at Troy, some switching at Learwood, but at the high school, because kids don't have identical schedules, they'll be switching classes.
And Jack, the idea of why we're going to the schedule we're going to at the high school is to avoid that movement as much as possible. I don't know, earlier, did you talk about also the rolling dismissals from classes? Again, that piece of making sure we social distance as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, I had mentioned we'd be adding some additional time, but we're actually like, we're at the high school, they're gonna have 5 minutes between classes, but then there's gonna be another 5 rolling minutes. So basically it's 10 minutes, but it won't be a full 10 minutes for everyone. We'll start dismissing certain classes and then we'll dismiss other classes later by grade so that we're not having the hallways full for the entire 10 minutes.
You know, and I think this is a piece that, you know, again, we're going to have to work on once we get the kids in and the teachers are fully aware of it. Again, having kids in a room and not letting them come out of the room for hours at a time is not good health-wise or socially, emotionally. You know, the idea is to be able to get them up, get them to move, but do it in a safe manner. And a lot of that will be part of what the teacher does. You know, whether they go to the restroom, you know, we don't want long lines at the restroom. We want kids to be able to queue up, stay social distance, get in, get out to the playground, come back in. You know, and part of what we're talking about with the teachers is, you know, we have a tendency to focus on, you know, we need to really work on academics. We need to spend all of our time. Again, we're in a different place. Part of this is if we need kids to get up and move, then we need to go do that. We just need to make sure we do it in a safe manner. And a lot of that is just looking out the door and making sure nobody else is in the hallway. So we're going to keep working on this and it's going to keep changing and we'll get better at it the further we go in.
And those of you that have high school students, we're going to need the students, and not just at the high school, but at every grade level, we need them to cooperate with us and to understand the severity of the situation. I have 2 high school age kids at home, and I know what it's like to cringe every time they ask to go to a friend's house or to go to Cracker Park or whatever. I mean, they have to understand the importance of social distancing and wearing masks and avoiding doing, you know, the goofy things that sometimes high school kids like to do. And so we're going to work with them, but we need you to help us reinforce with them that this is something that we just can't take lightly. Lunch menus will be posted online when they're available. Wow, a lot of these are just thank yous. Do you anticipate a transition period for students who start the year as online and then switch to an in-person so they can acclimate to their class teacher and fellow classmates? I assume you're talking about if that happens at the semester break, and we'll be obviously working on a transition plan based on the scenario that happens in January. And again, everything is just so subject to change. I can't even imagine what January will be like. If you hear the experts, they're saying the winter will be worse than it is now. I don't know how that is, but so that's just something we'll have to keep looking at. I'm looking to see, I don't see any more YouTube questions. Let me just glance at my email really quick. Don't see any more email questions. So I am actually at the end of the questions. If for some reason I somehow missed your question, I absolutely apologize. I think I hit everyone. If I didn't, feel free to chat me up really quick right now. We'll hold on another minute or two before we end this. Mr. Scott, do you want to say anything while we're giving them one last shot to ask questions?
You know, I just, you know, wanted to go back to what we said at the beginning and just thank you, everybody. Thank you for the input. Again, I'm going to apologize for some of the inconveniences that are going to happen during the school year, but you know, we need to keep the kids as safe as possible, and we need to all work together in order to keep our in-person school going. Like Jack said, you know, especially the older kids as we're going up, what they need to remember is they're protecting each other. You know, and I guess a good example of this might be if you're a baseball fan. You know, the Marlins ended up starting the season, and now the Marlins are down because of COVID inside the ranks. That's what we want to avoid. You know, we know kids are going to get sick. We want to make this as risk-free as possible, but we also know that it can't be completely risk-free. You know, there is nothing out there, even at home, that's going to necessarily be completely risk-free. But we're going to work at this hard, and we're going to do everything we can to keep the kids safe, keep our staff members safe, and be able to keep having in school as much as possible. But thank you for being patient. Thank you for working with us, and thank you for the input.
Yes,
as I
really
said,
quick, two questions that we had. We would offer additional online sections in January if more people decide they'd like to sign up in January. Absolutely. And then I'm not sure if I answered this, but I got to ask it again. So the masks are primary, face shields are allowed as a secondary covering. And I'll just say thank you again to everyone for your participation and your concern and your questions, and most of all for your support of the Avon Lake City Schools. Have a great day and thank you. Enjoy the sunshine today.